and welcome everyone. We are finally there. TJ finally gets not stuck anymore in his traffic, and so we will be ready to start. And I'm very happy because this time, and it's been a long time, we finally get the chance to discuss about the EU tournament, because most of the time we have like Prime Championship Circuit, and here it's for the core, the Fangbooth tournament. And as you can see on screen, I'm joined by Mr.Meds and TJDJ. How are you both guys doing tonight?
Absolutely,
we're doing good.
Hating the traffic system in the UK, but other than that, we're doing well. Apologies, but on my end.
Yeah, we're doing all right over here. You know, the sun's still shining over in NA, so and you know the Pred games are rolling, so it must be a good day.
Yeah, definitely. And as usual, I forget to give the mic to my guests, so I put them like on the spot for them to talk together at the same time. Of course, we don't have the professionalism that our dog can have when she's hosting the whole tournament, and that's the thing. Like I need to still improve on myself, but. We are here to talk about the Fangbooth. It was the 6th edition, and so here we're gonna have like, it's kind of a similar format of what we have for the PCC. So there was like some teams that were battling out into the group phase, and here we are going to focus only on the main event when the top 8 team in EU were battling for gaining like the trophy in the end. And I think there was like a prize pool of 450 euros, something like that, for the first place. So for this tournament, at least we had a prize pool, which was like a new occurrence for the EU tournament. And here we can see that we had Team Immune making a comeback. They weren't present for the Fangbooth number 5. And so every single Fangbooth they participated on, like they won it. So of course, like it was a very expected return for a team. We had Imports Backpack, with a wonderful name and a wonderful logo. I have to say, like this Hello Kitty backpack for Import, I think fits perfectly. I can't wait to see the real Import with a photo of this backpack behind him. We had Indecisive. Yeah, I want to see it. Like, no, like people at Omeda, if you hear us, like you're forced to make that happen. Like a little Hello Kitty backpack for Import for his birthday and take the picture with it.
The merchandise opportunities are just like writing themselves at the moment. Don't have like Hello Kitty, but maybe have like a Rampage or like a Chimera on there with the little bow. You know, call me. I've got some ideas.
Actually, Ace tweeted about it, a behind the scenes video that he's going to be doing and releasing. If he could put that in there, great. You know, content gold right there. Ace, sign us up. Let's go. We'll make that video for you.
Or perhaps Steel, Goat, something like that. Like there is a lot of like potential definitely here. And so then we had Indecisive, former PCC 5 champion, with kind of like a new roster, but still like the 2 Frenchmen staying inside it with Manhu and Moros. We had Rocket Rookies, we had Ronin, a long-standing team in EU. We got some NA people coming towards the EU tournament facing the ping. With North American Reject, we got Thunder, and we got Omelette du Baguette. Yeah, that's the team I participated on. It's the first tournament I participated on ever. I don't know if I really want to talk about it, but we'll see what happens there. And so, as you all know, like usually the format of the Meta Talk is that we discuss overall about what happened in the tournament. And so here we see like the whole bracket with the different results, if I didn't made any mistake while recreating it. And then after that, like after this like little moment that we discuss about all this event, we're gonna dive into stats. And so we have pick and ban rate of the whole tournament. We will have also the win rate of each pick, and we will also have like the pick and bans of the 2 top teams. So here, as we can see, it's Indecisive and Immune. And then we will gonna dive a little bit more by role and get a little bit of team stat before and then player stat. And of course, the usual little rewards at the end, because we love to give like some trivia reward for no purpose than just like creating some memes in the community. So that was me talking for quite a while. So I'm gonna like give the mic here to TJ. And what is like the first thing that you kind of want to talk about like this whole bracket and this whole tournament that you cast quite a few games of it actually?
Yes, I was incredibly honored to be casting. I think I casted Rocket Rookies, Omelette du Baguette. I casted Imports, Backpack vs. Sunder in the quarterfinals, and then I had the incredible privilege, thank you so much, Kana, to be casting the grand finals, which went all the way to Game 5 with Tang alongside me. And I think like that was I was thinking about it. I think it's only the second time in competitive pred that, to my knowledge of like PCC and Fangbooth, we've actually gone to a full 5 games in that grand finals as well. So it was quite a monumental moment. And of course, indecisive, overcoming the final boss of Team Immune to, I think I said on the cast that you can't be true champions of the Fangbooth until you take down Team Immune, and it was an incredible set. But I'm just going to kind of to run through this bracket really. We could start with like Rocket Rookies versus Omelette du Baguette. Don't worry, Mugi. We'll start with the team you're on now. We'll get it over with. But yeah, I mean, from that game, I think I remember being incredibly impressed with Omelette du Baguette for the first like early into that mid game transition. I think we said in like the preparation that we were expecting Mugi. I know what you're like with your streams and your analytics. You were going to have probably the most prepared team in the entire event for this one. And honestly, the first 10 minutes, first 20 minutes, everyone was on form. I think like Puzzled Panda absolutely ran the show in the jungle, had like 100% kill participation in that first 10 minutes. And then we hit the 29-minute mark and it kind of crumbled. It was so good up until that moment. I think it was a team fight. I think it was around that Fangtooth pit or something like that. Samwise on his Muriel pick just kind of absolutely took over these fights, and they just deathballed to a game 1 or game 2 victory, really.
Yeah, indeed, it's like for playing those game, one of the things that why I'm not super fond of like talking about it is because like I felt like a little bit like it was kind of sad because I feel this team had so much potential, but I kind of overestimated the amount of hours I have in a single day, and like with all the thing going on, we didn't manage to get like enough training going on. And I felt like there was so much potential. On top of that, like we can see at the beginning, like we have the potential to play super clean, don't make like wrong decision. But at the same time here, really like the lack of practice. Like Rocket Rookies, I think they played like 12 scrim in the weeks coming into the tournament. They really put in the work, trying to get the best out of they can. Well, me on my side, I didn't even manage to get a support game the 2 weeks prior to the tournament. And so I felt like very bad for my teammate because I really wanted to make something happen, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be. And so I do really hope that the rest of the roster, all those 4 people, because for me, that will be it when it comes to actually playing as a player. I prefer to focus on content creation, all the tools for the community, coaching aspect, because like it's just like too much at some point. But yeah, like I felt like we can kind of get blessed in a sense when like the bracket got released, because I felt like of course like Rocket Rookies a strong team, but kind of under the strengths of like a Team Immune or Indecisive or even Imports Backpack. So I felt like that was like the match that could like be actually like very, very interesting. But in the end, Gak is an absolute monster. Samwise also like that duo lane. Like even if overall Rocket Rookies is not in my top 3, that duo lane was in my top 3 for this tournament. Like only in my opinion, only like Kabodani and Mankyu or Nefty and Shin could actually like compete against like this roster on the duo lane, and they really like try to play around it because they were really like the star player on their team.
Yeah, and I would actually echo that. I mean, I think Gak and Samwise were they were running this tournament. I mean, they did only get to the semis, right? And Immune did kind of take them down in that semis, but it was definitely a very hard fought semifinal match, right? We did see that at one point Gak was just so far ahead of like the enemy team that like he was just so scary. His what was it? His Drongo pick was just so scary. I'm surprised nobody was like banning it against him. We did see as we probably go in further slides, we did see that there were a few ADC bans here and there. But Gak was running it. Samwise was running it. They were just so dominant over opponents. So yeah, very surprising.
And talking more a little bit about Gak and Sam, since we're on it right now, like I felt like also like sometimes in the dual lane, and we don't see that a lot by dual lane, but they know their timing of aggression, and suddenly like they start pressing W key on the timing you think it's actually like a full wave, and suddenly like you're in a situation that you're actually dying. And also like Gag, I feel like the quality of last hitting. Of course, we talk about the farm of Neft, but so many games like Gag was actually like 50% CS up towards his direct opponent. Like especially in the losers final against Imports Backpack, like the matchup of Gag against Julie Latina, like so many times like Gag was like at 200 CS when Julie Latina was only 130, and really like in terms of farming, knowing his timing of aggression and kind of being a hard carry to contain, like Gak is definitely there, and so I can't wait to see him in the future tournament and keep following his progression as a player.
Yeah, and I completely echo that as well about Gak. I mean, this tournament's completely solidified him as top 380 carries in Europe at the moment. I don't think there's any disputing that now. Neft, in my opinion, remains the top player. Kabadani has significantly narrowed that gap, because I think before today, I think I'd be quite fair in saying that Neft was like the clear top. And then you had like just a tier below that, you had Kabadani, you had Gak in there, and then you had the rest of the AD carries below there. And there was quite a gap between Neft and Gak and Kabadani, and that just comes down to, I mean, Neft is absolutely insane at this game. Let's just be perfectly honest. He's got the personal record to back it up. He's got a competitive record to back it up. He's one of the members of what I dubbed like the predecessor Grand Slam winners. So to win a Fangbooth and then a PCC immediately afterwards, like there's only 5 players to ever do that, and that is the Team Immune squad, and Neft of course being one of them. So
yeah, I will say though that it was actually really interesting. I'll bring up these 2 individuals, Kabadani and Samwise. There are 2 individuals that play something that we hadn't seen in PCC, right? Like PCC is an NA tournament, right? And Kira and Muriel are not played really at all in NA. And, and kind of going back to your point, Mugi, Samwise on that Muriel allows for that W key. And, Kira probably isn't seen that much in the competitive scene because it really only cropped up in this tournament. And Kabadani is an absolute monster on that champion and was able to, put up numbers, which is really, really good.
Yeah, and we will be able to go on to it like to the pick and bats, but discussing with the man himself, Kabadani, he said that he loved Kira because it's kind of like an all-in carry that can like actually compete against the Twin Blast or the Race that are more like that poke type style of carry, and so trying to go for like a counter play because Race was like, if you try to go to poke into a Race, you're just gonna lose because he was so good. Yeah. But moving on when it comes to the match, then we can like maybe advance to Immune against Ronin. And on that like quarterfinal, like of course I was expecting Immune to win, but I wasn't expecting Immune to win that way. Like really, Ronin is a long-standing roster in EU. They have a lot of great players. They have played like for a long time together. And Immune like kind of pulled out like 2 masterclass of like efficiency on how to win games. And I was very surprised by like the domination in that match when I felt like that Ronin was the strongest tier 2 team, like qualified second from the group phase.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ronin has kind of had, and pardon my French here, but the shit end of the stick. And for all those EU people out there, I know I wasn't really speaking French, but yeah, I think they kind of got the shit end of the stick a little bit. I think, like you're saying, they're a very long-standing team. I thought that this year was going to be their year to pull out, their, really good run. I think they had a really good group stage, and kind of pulling Immune in the quarterfinals is kind of a little unlucky for them. And I think that, they did play well. If they didn't face against Immune, maybe they'd get into the semis. Maybe if they pull like NA Rejects or, maybe they pull Sunder, maybe they can make it through to the quarters. But I think overall they played very well. Just kind of an unlucky draw.
Yeah, as I said, I completely agree. Like, someone has to face immune,
Yeah.
someone has to face indecisive, and just the nature of the tournaments, 8-team single elim best of 3 bracket. Like, you've got to play against them, which is a shame as well because I completely agree about Ronin as well. Like, one of the long-standing teams. I think they've participated in every single Fangbooth event, or
I think
like they
have,
turn
yeah.
up. Their roster is consistent as anything. Like, it's the same players, just event after event after event. They made it through to grand finals in Fangbooth 5. So that was, it's like, okay, maybe this was the turning point. We can see what they can do. Look at the tape, look at the VOD, come back, and then they get hit by the immune train on their grand return. And yeah, they really did get that end of the stick, which is such a shame because I like Ronin. They, as a team, they have a very like defined identity. Like, they don't play conventionally. Like, they play more to their strengths as a team rather than to the strengths of like kind of the meta or some things. Like, no, this is how we play the game. It's very aggressive, it's very explosive, and when it works, it's beautiful to watch. Watching like Skype Hamster and Jax just absolutely demolishing teams left and right in the lanes. But unfortunately, when you play like that close to the edge, sometimes if you just go against a team like Immune, where they're like, "Oh, you want to play like this? Sure, we'll match you on mechanics." You see the weaknesses there, and Immune played a clean game, honestly.
I think the first match, like Immune versus Ronin, like pre 20 minutes, they already got like 3 Fangtooths and 2 Mini Prime, and then they follow up with the R Prime, and they finished the game in 23 minutes, I think, something like that. It was just like, Immune, that teach you how you close out the game by never like releasing the gas pedal. And so they kind of did like something similar against Rocket Rookies. I felt like Team Immune did like very well, and once again, like one of the big strengths of like Rocket Rookies is like we were talking like this duo lane, and even if they got like some good moment against FT and Shin, like overall the quality of the synergy as a squad and also like the individual quality on the other role was a little bit too much to handle for the side of Rocket Rookies. While on the other side of the bracket, like Import's backpack against Indecisive, like in the end, it was a clean 2-0. And that was like part that I was actually like expecting a lot to see. And I felt like there could have been like I wasn't expecting like that 2-0 sweep from the side of Indecisive. Like I was a little bit indecisive about who is going to win that semifinal.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, we what you did there, we see it.
Well, we all heard it. It wasn't anything special, but yeah, it's. But the backpack was, I don't know, like it felt like here it was a little bit like Indecisive just like showed up on that tourney day, to be fair, and I felt like Import wasn't the demon it was on PCC 6. Like there was a lot of opportunity for those teal on R Prime that he usually never miss, and here like Indecisive was a little bit too tight for him to be able to pull off like those crazy plays that he usually pull off.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're seeing a lot of 2-0s throughout this entire bracket, and that was definitely a match that I didn't think was gonna go to 2-0, right? Just looking at the actual rosters themselves, I thought that Import's backpack, Wangle and Import, Julie, they would have been able to at least take a game off of that and maybe make it a little close. And I think, what was it, in game one, maybe it was looking good going into like the midway part of the game, if I'm remembering correctly. And then it was that one team fight that kind of just exploded it, right? If I'm remembering that game correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, and then it just kind of indecisive, just steamrolled it. So I think that was definitely in a point that I was like, hey, this is definitely just going to be a 2-0. But definitely a surprise going into when I saw the bracket 2 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, I think I had that series down as well. I think on the predictions, like I think the predictions into semi-finals kind of worked out. I agree with you, Meds, as well. That Import's backpack indecisive, probably the closest of the semi-final matchups at least. And I think this was the big test as well because when we were doing preparation for Fangbooth at all. We were looking into scrims, we were looking into data and stuff like that. And Indecisive, I think they just came off the back of some like pretty rough scrims and stuff like that. They weren't getting the results they kind of wanted, and we thought, okay, like this is a big moment for the team. Either they turn up and they're absolutely incredible, or something goes wrong and they kind of fall apart, really. So it's kind of like watching that turnaround, and it's a little bit similar to even worse timing in PCC 6. We looked at like kind of their scrim history and stuff like that, and it was red. Honestly, it was just L L L L L L. It was brutal. We were like, oh my word, this like professors are just gonna wipe the floor with them in this semi-final, and then well, we all know what happened, really. Yep. So scrims only tell part of the story. So, and I think that kind of proves it as well. And definitely think Indecisive turned up when it mattered. And honestly, I planets aligning, just everyone on the same page, and they can overcome even teams like Immune and Imports Backpack on their day as well.
And so since we have been talking about like Indecisive, I think we can move on to like the grand final. Like TJ already talked a little bit about it. I think it was our first like best of 5 that go to the distance. And personally, I didn't get the chance to watch like the final when it was like happening. I just finished watching like the grand final like yesterday and this afternoon. Like it was like the last game and the 4 game yesterday. And like it was a blast to watch. Like there was like a lot of action. Both teams were kind of neck and neck, and there was like a lot of action. And to be fair, like compared to like previous edition of the Fangbooth, like not that many like obvious mistake that just like create like the game. Like, and one moment that I feel like was like crazy for me, it's of course like this game 4. Like Team Immune is up 2-1. Indecisive is their back against the wall, and Team Immune is just like pulling the same match they have pulled against Ronin. Like we're 25 minutes in, they just have a super clean game. They're completely dominating. And here, out of nowhere, like we have like a 4v5 that is getting initiated. We do have MT that is like stepping a little bit forward, and people said that MT stole the game, but personally, like they got a lot of their success by MT actually playing those aggressive positioning and then turning the fight around, because MT on his Gideon loves to play those like very tanky build with the Orb of Enlightenment, the True Silver Bracelet, the Wall Breaker. And so that's how like Team Immune operate a big time. And MT get exploded in that situation, but it still like did a lot of damage. But then afterwards we got like a wonderful hook by Manq that catch Nefty, and he was like I think 14 kill and 2 on that match on the rest once again. And as soon as they removed that, suddenly like Team Indecisive managed to secure that fight. Then that's an Or Prime. Then they transform that into like the Primal, and then like they press W, but I could really force until like the end to finish like the game in 3 minutes. They do for the full comeback, because if they don't finish there, like Team Immune, even when the double buff is gone, they're still ahead because they were that far ahead. And so like people kind of say like MT stole that game, but there is so much more to the story in that, and so much that Indecisive actually like managed to pull that win to be able to come to that game 5.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like it's just one of them things which is kind of I think it's a very easy pitfall. Like when you kind of watch a game, it's so easy to focus on the player that gets caught out, the player that gets picked off or anything like that. It's just one moment in that thing that it's kind of almost like the straw that broke the camel's back, if to follow like kind of that idiom sort of thing as well. It's like, yes, MT's mistake was capitalized on by Indecisive again. It's I think it was it the hook outside the Fangtooth pit, if I'm remembering this correctly. I think it was onto MT, and he just got blown up, and Manq just became an absolute monster, grabbing both MT and Neft one after the other. Absolutely incredible. But it's like moments like that, it's so easy to fall in the pitfall, like, oh, MT through the game, oh, why did he miss position and all that? And it's like, hang on, we're in game 4 of a grand finals. Like there is an entire there's 3 games before this. Then you've got semi-finals to go back to like that game against Rocket Rockets, even like the quarterfinals as well. Like MT's been playing phenomenal, like all through this tournament, and it's literally just that one moment that unfortunately it kind of like, oh, we're just going to completely forget about everything else. Let's just focus on this next, which you can't really. There's too many factors in play here.
Indeed. So I guess like because for those that don't know, unfortunately for us, Mr. Meds will have to leave us in 20 minutes. So we're gonna advance more like into the data part of it, so we can take the chance of having like the analysis for all this part. And on top of that, that means that we also have someone that follow like intensively the PCC 6, and so that should give like some nice discussion about like the NA meta against the EU meta, and that's what like can be nice to see in this type of also like discussion that we have with various guests. So moving on to the pick and ban graph, as you can see here, I'm just gonna explain quickly how you read that. Basically, we had 19 matches being played in that Fangbooth. And what is in blue is the number of time a pick has been selected to be played in a match. And on orange is a time that one of the pick got banned in the 4 ban because it's 2 ban per team. And the first thing we can notice is Rampage, Rictor, and Quang 100% like presence in every. So basically in every single game, there were either pick or ban.
I'm not surprised at this at all. I think Rampage with his what was this bug that got fixed. I think it was actually fixed before the last PCC, but we didn't really see a lot of Rampage in the last PCC. You know, I think now people finally were like, "Wow, actually, this bug fix was huge, and Rampage is an absolute monster." We saw him in a lot of scrims before the Fangbooth tournament. And, you know, he was doing very, very well. And I think that that's exactly why we're seeing 16 bans here. You know, we only see 3 pickups from him. That kind of tells me, yeah, this champ is just way too strong. Ray, please nerf him. And I will also say, though, that there are a lot of players that play Rampage, right? And are very good at Rampage. You know, one of those names being Import, right? He picked up the Rampage in and I believe PCC, and he was just perma-ganking mid, right? And he wasn't allowed to do that in this tournament. You know, having that CDR Rampage build was just running rampant, and you know, the rock was just too much for teams, so they were saying, get him off the board.
Yeah, it's just the sheer amount of lockdown that Rampage can bring as well. Like those 3 games that he got picked twice, picked up by Puzzled Panda, and then I think Nizer got a game in the quarterfinals as well. And then from that point on, we were like, you know what? I don't know if I missed like the Fangbooth Union meeting or something like that. It's like, oh, if you are on blue side, you ban the Rampage. Like that's just the rule at this point here. The King of the Jungle is back, honestly, and it's kind of crazy as well, like that subtle change, really, just fixing a bug, and all of a sudden he's just gone from, because I think when he was in his previous state, he was just kind of forgotten about, really. I think in the early stages of like PCC 6 and stuff like that, like group stages, just never saw him. He just went straight through the pick and ban. It was all about Chimera, it was all about Greystone, and now the King is back. And you know, long may he reign, because honestly, casting boulders being thrown from different states going into different lanes is never not fun. But hey, I'm just sitting in my little cloud shouting about a game. I'm not playing against a 2-second stun CC chain, combining with a Richter, combining with a Quang, combining with a Bellica, combining with Decker, combining with everything.
Yeah.
Well, you actually hit on a really big pick. You know, the Greystone. We do see him being picked up, you know, 1 ban and 6 picks down in the kind of the bottom middle of that graph there. And, you know, we did say that Chimera and Greystone were the 2 that kind of butted heads, and that Greystone was kind of the answer into the Chimera. Well, now we're seeing that Quang be picked up as the answer, or I guess I should say the Chimera more likely being picked up as the answer to the Quang, because Quang was just super oppressive in a lot of these games. You know, that tether, the true damage from the lightning, and then his just overall engage and tankiness that he brought to a lot of these teams was just so good at dealing with the aggression that came out of the Chimera. So I think it was really good. Little adaptation from, you know, the NA scene and the PCC. I know that Quang wasn't allowed in the PCC last tournament, but, you know, as the first time that we're seeing Quang in a tournament, I thought he had a very good showing. Maybe we'll see some nerfs coming out of that character as well.
He
Yeah.
definitely kicked up a storm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the only one who can crack this one, so I'll see you all next week. No, it was. I think it's more like just the sheer versatility that Quang is able to offer, really, and teams utilize that perfectly. They put him in solo lane, put him into the jungle, into those matchups. I don't even think Quang necessarily has any bad matchups to worry about, really. With teams kind of, it's almost like teams didn't pick the Quang because they were forced with a choice. Like there were so many power picks available. It's like, right, what do we go for here? And it was very dependent more on player comfort, I think. But teams that could play Quang and play Quang very well got very far in this tournament as well.
Yeah, and it's exactly that. I think like Quang, like the main reason he was like almost always like first pick or first ban, like it's because like he had no losing matchup in the off lane. But on top of that, he was a flex pick for jungle if you want to spice things up even more. So you can never go wrong by going for the Quang pick. And I think like one of the reasons that we see like Sevrog like coming back so much into the meta with 18 appearance overall and 16 pick and only 2 bans was because like teams kind of try to find like, do we have something that kind of still be able to play a little bit the game and kind of scale a little bit into a Quang offlane? Because like that's the solution, that's the best solution the EU scene found to the Quang offlane was to go a Sevrog that will still lose lane but still get like the opportunity to scale. And I don't think it's because Sevrog is like that insane of a pick. I just believe it's because like Quang was completely unstoppable and that was the best like second rate answer we can find, and that's why like we see the Sevrog being so high.
And I think just to go back on, like, to piggyback off that Sevrog pick as well, is that I feel like the game time, the actual how long these games were going in Fangbooth played a massive part into that. I think most of the game, like, I know the two, just like the games I casted, 28 plus minutes, 29 minutes. So there were 35-minute games, 36-minute games. So these games are going late. We're getting first blood after 6 to 7 minutes. Fangtooth's not even being started until about 10 minutes into the game. I think there was a 1 point in the grand finals, I think, where we were about 25 plus minutes, and we'd only just taken down like the third Fangtooth. Like that's just how slow these games are going out. So it's like, yeah, the Sevrog is actually allowed to scale into that, and I would actually like to see the win rate on the next slide, Mugi, as well, to see like kind of like what was the result of that as well.
Yeah, we're gonna see them, but a little bit after we finish like covering all of that, we have to keep a little bit of information hidden here. And I think like here for the next like point, I think that could be like interesting because that's one of the EU versus NA differences when I want to talk a little bit about the Gideon. Like Gideon in PCC 6, I think 18 matches, 2 pick, 4 ban, only 33% of appearance, and every time like Gideon was picked, he'll just lose. And NA kind of consider Gideon to be like very bad. While here in EU, we even see that Team Immune decided to first pick it when the Rictor and Quang were open. So that shows like how much like Gideon is valued in EU. And I have to admit, like, I don't know if it's like this new EU build that kind of make Gideon strong, like with like the tankiness and playing like differently than like kind of the one-shot build that usually we see on NA. But we can also like balance that with another mid lane that is like completely missing, which is Iggy and Scorch. And do you have like anything to say on that, Mr. Meds?
Yeah, I was literally just about to say that because I was looking at the chart, and earlier when I was doing some prep for this, I was like, what champs weren't played? And I was looking at it and I was like, oh, Sparrow. Yeah. That kind of can call that one. But then I realized that Iggy and Scorch is not here. And it doesn't look like he was picked up at all when he was absolutely dominating in PCC. Like it was, maybe it was just Bry on that pick in PCC that maybe he's just a Iggy and Scorch one trick and can just carry games. but I think it's a testament to kind of the two play styles of NA
Mm.
versus the EU, right? EU, I feel like this Gideon pick being that aggressive pick, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with Empty kind of going forward, getting a lot of damage in. I feel like Iggy's more about playing around the objectives rather than let's get a huge team fight and then transition into objectives, which I think Gideon does very, very well, especially with that torn space, in that big team fight ultimate. So I think that Empty played very.
Oh, we just lost Mr. Meds out of like the call. I don't know what happened to him. Maybe,
Okay.
maybe he will come back, but first swing on that Gideon, we'll see. Like we'll fix the camera afterwards to see if Mr. Meds is coming back or not. Oh, he's coming back. So
There
you
we
get
go.
cut off. Welcome back.
Oh, something happened. Oh, geez. Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Like you were inside it, so I'm sorry. You will have to redo it a little bit. About like we're talking about MT and aggressive playstyle, and then the
Oh, yeah.
differences with
And
like
then the
the
call
Iggy,
dropped. Yeah.
and then
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah. I was just saying that, like, I think that NA is more, tailored towards this objective style of play rather than, taking the 5v5 fight and then getting into the objectives, right? And kind of transitioning those picks that they can get, generating that, aggression that Gideon can have, where, I feel like Iggy's more set up for the objective and will take the 5v5 on the objective, right? And I think that that's kind of a stylistic difference that we're seeing from EU and NA. And, I'm not surprised that we're seeing a lot of Gideon. I think that build that Empty was going with that Orb of Enlightenment and True Silver was very good. It's a good adaptation, especially when we see Richter being very prevalent. Having that True Silver bracelet, being able to give that immunity to a lot of those CCs, allows for, that big ultimate to kind of do as much damage as that needs to be, right?
Yeah, and I think, sorry, Moogie.
And I've seen also like kind of like a lot of people getting baited by the tankiness of the Gideon, and they use like all SCCs thinking they can one-shot him, and suddenly like the Gideon use Black Hole with Soul Bearer, the lifesteal, and suddenly like you're completely dead because you don't have anything else. And the last thing I kind of find also, I feel like EU team are getting very good at using the torn space as a team, not as a single tool for the Gideon, because it's actually like a very good tool for engaging, disengaging, creating like surprise moment chasing. And I feel like EU team are starting to get better at coordinating around that ability, something that maybe on NA we're not using as much on the Gideon pick.
And I think like the last point I wanted to make about the Gideon is that I like so I agree, like kind of it almost feels like a distraction. Gideon picking away, like the tankiness catches you out, the black hole goes off, and it's when you're in these team fights in that competitive environment, it's kind of like, oh, we got to deal with the Gideon black hole, and you burn resources trying to get rid of the black hole, and it's like actually there's a whole other fight that's still going on. It's almost like the Gideon is ulting not to provide the damage. It's almost like providing the disruption that it causes to slow the pull in and allow everyone else to pile in that damage. But I think like with EU as kind of like a play style thing, I've noticed that as you say, Meds, if NA is more about that objective style, I think EU more leans into kind of opportunistic play. Like we will see teams where you will have 6 to 7 minutes of absolute snooze fest farming, nothing happens. 30 seconds later, we've had 4 kills go down, the Fang Juice been taken, 2 towers drop, and Mini Prime has been started. And I think it's almost because we just like here in EU, we just have a go button, and the Gideon gives you that. Like we're initiating, I'm going black hole. I can just find an opportunity, and that's I think why Empty it's one of his signature picks as well on this Gideon is he plays around that so well. It's like Immune can just start a fight whenever they see an opportunity. And Empty goes in. Black hole is it's almost like the black hole is kind of like the primary engage in a way. It just pulls everyone's attention and the rest of the team floods in and then transition from that into the objectives. And I think as well that's why we see like Bellica getting picked as well. Blink Seismic Assaults, which we saw in the supporting role, but like Manq had some of those moments in throughout the series as well, and also when it's picked up in mid lane. Howitzer has very similar as well. You can make a play with the Make It Rain, you can make a play with the landmine, catch someone out, and all of a sudden, boom, instant team fight ready, oven cooked and ready to go sort of thing.
Definitely. And so here, moving on a little bit more, like another thing that we kind of notice is like when it comes to the carry role, actually, like we have kind of a spread. Like we see Drongo 10 times, Res 8 times, Twin Blast 5 times, Kira 7 times, Murdoch 6 times. And so like there seems to be quite a healthy like direction of like going for a wide spread of carry in EU, even though like here we still see like the 2 Revenant pick, but they didn't perform well. And of course, Sparrow is out of the question in competitive scene, but all the rest, like it's actually like quite open. And we see also like a little bit of targeted ban, like 1 ban on the Drongo, 2 on the Res, 2 on the Twin Blast, none of the Kira, but 1 on the Murdoch. So it seems like carry is like kind of diverse role right now in competitive gaming, like even more so than mid is, at least on the EU side, and also like still get a little bit of attention from the bans. And that's like actually great to see, because that means that Omeda is actually doing a good job at balancing all those heroes and having all those heroes having like different strengths and weaknesses that team picked in different scenarios.
Yeah, I will say that I think the ADC role is definitely the most diverse, like you were saying. I think you can pretty much play any ADC. I from an NA perspective, I probably wouldn't be picking up Kira. I don't think she's as strong as some of the EU folks think. But I do think that we did see that TB be that really, really strong pick, in earlier patches. But I think he's kind of been tapered off a little bit, giving rise to the Kira, to the Murdoch, which were probably the worst matchups into the TB, in my mind. So I thought it was a really good showing from all of these ADCs. I think every single one of them had a standout game, where they popped off. So I think it was really good, to see, running the gambit of all the ADCs, which is really good.
And
Yeah, we have some incredible like Wraith players here in EU. Honestly, like I mean, Neft and Kabadani both got opportunities to showcase the Wraith and what they can do. I mean, Gak made that Drongo pick his signature throughout the entire tournament as well. Murdoch being brought out as kind of old reliable. Kira was for Kabadani. Like it felt to me like it was like there wasn't really much priority going towards the AD carry role. It was kind of like giving the AD carried a complete freedom to choose, really. It's not like, oh, we need to take this pick because they're insanely strong or insanely broken. It's like, actually, no, we're going to take our ADC 4th pick, 5th pick, or even 3rd pick before the ban phase if you want to like give a ban towards the AD carry, which is why you did see a little sprinkling of bans to the Drongo, the Twin Blast and stuff like that. So I think it's a sign, obviously, of just good healthiness, really, in the competitive scene that here we have every ADC, apart from Sparrow, but that's another talk for another day, having their time in the spotlight, really.
And since like we're going to come close to the time that Mr. Meds will have to leave us, I will just like quickly move towards the win rate slide and let Mr. Meds like share like the thing he wants about it, so we can like, and then you will be free to go for your in real life obligation.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I wanted to point out is that we did see that Quang had this really high win rate at 67%. I think that kind of reflects the the 18 picks and bans that he had, as we saw before. I was a little bit surprised to see Richter only at 38% win rate. I feel as though that's a little low, seeing as how dominant he was in PCC6, right? With Toasty getting those huge hooks, even with Mancube being having that huge hook that we were talking about earlier on Empty there, in that last indecisive game. So I think that those two picks I think were really good. Seeing Severog at the 44% I thought was really good. As we were talking about before, he wasn't that much of a pick in PCC6, but now as TJ was saying, the longer games tended to be more favorable for him in this Fangbooth. So I really enjoyed seeing a lot of Severog. But one of the other picks that I did want to talk about is Grux being 100% win rate. I love Grux. I really would like to see him in the support role. If we can get that in the next
Morose.
tournament, yeah, Morose. If you're making a switch over to support, love to see that.
It's there is a lot going on here. Of course, feel free, like Mr. Meds, when you have to go to just render
Yeah,
the mic.
I will end it on that. So I appreciate everybody being here, talking about competitive pred, and we'll keep it on to the next tournament.
And thank you for joining us. It has been a blast. We'll definitely see you again, probably in PCC 7, I assume,
Hopefully.
on the desk, hopefully. And have a good time in the meantime. And we are going to stay with TJDJ and myself to try to wrap up like the rest of the stats. We still have a lot to talk about on the win rate. And we're going to just like fix quickly the cameras because, of course, like the production value of that show is incredible. And then we have to remove like this little camera. No, it's not the right camera. This is TJ. So TJ is going to go here. I don't know where is the other camera. Myself maybe here, I guess. So we're fixing that on live. It's wonderful. I love that. I guess like TJ, while I'm fixing the camera, you can talk a little bit about the win rate and then I will take it from there.
I just want to start with kind of the Grux pick as well. Like I have in my notes here, just in all capital letters, morose. That is all, really. It's kind of crazy to me, really, that we only saw the Grux 3 times. It was played all 3 times by Morose. Morose won every single game. He did a 1v2 in the quarterfinals. He did a 1v3 in the semifinals, and then he played the Grux in the game-winning game in the grand finals.
Yeah.
So incredible to watch, really. And I think like a lot of this, somebody like the lower picks normally are kind of like reserved for like kind of pocket picks or situational picks as well. But I think we had, I do like that screen. Just seeing on the screen. Well done, Mugi. I really like that. So like seeing things like something like the Feng Mao, for instance, having like that 80% win rate, I think that was kind of brought out every now and again. I think Import had a game on it. I think Morose had a game on it as well. Like low picks, because they're situational kind of pocket picks, you spring out as almost like a got you sort of moment. And then you also had like the Kalari as well, like being played by, I think like Niza had a couple of games as well. So you have like a little sprinkling across the board, really. And I think as well, it's like kind of from like a caster perspective, like player storylines as well, like their signature picks, their signature heroes. It's always amazing to see them on their signature picks, and hey, they're able to perform as well. They don't have to conform to the meta completely. They do still have some aces of their sleeve, so to speak.
And so like one of the things that I think was very interesting is like you mentioned, what I want to say also, like for people watching that graph, naturally like the numbers on the right and the rampage number are not really like super valuable because it's a very small sample size. So of course, like when we look at data, we always have to take that into consideration. It's a very small sample size, so that's not the absolute truth. Like for instance, rampage at 33%, if it wasn't banned 16 times, there was a reason. And so like those 2 games that being lost is basically like Omelette du Baguette not being able to win against Rookette rookies. That doesn't mean the pick is bad. However, like I think like here, like there was something I wanted to bounce back from like what Mr.Meds was saying on the Victor being at 38% and the Sevrag at 44%. And I think that kind of answer one of the grand question people had in that tournament of whether should we first pick Quang or Victor. And I think here the answer is like basically like both teams like were banning Rampage and they were trying to battle for the other 2 picks. And here it kind of showed that apparently Quang was the superior pick. And even with the Sevrog as an answer, it wasn't good enough. Like just Quang was dominating a lot.
And I'm wondering as well, Mugi, is kind of the breakdown of that Richter by role as well. Because I think, it feels like the Richter jungles might have had a bit more success than like the Richter supports, I think, especially like kind of like with the games that I casted as well. Like, Niza just had a bit more of an impactful game than like Shin had, I think, like 3 games in a row on the Richter support just wasn't clicking, wasn't really able to make it work or have that desired impact. So been an interesting one to look for.
Yeah, and definitely, like, I think we're gonna be able to see that, like, on the future slide. Also, like, I think, like, there was, like, Young Liden that is asking, like, do support hero sucks from the win rate? And I guess, like, the answer is probably that Bellica support was the top support. And actually, we only see 53% win rate because Bellica was played both on support and on mid lane. And we can probably, like, show, like, then the repartition by role specifically. We have that on the future slide. And yeah, as we can see, like, Decker, another meta talk, another main event, and another time she's under 50% win rate. At least this time she wasn't first pick, first ban every single round. So people start to catching up, but still, like, Decker, it's still supposed to be a super strong support, but it still doesn't perform. And I feel like maybe, like, on Decker, it comes a little bit like this Kira pick. I feel like Decker feels kind of strong, but if you're just playing like simple peeling, trying to hit a ball from time to time, you're going to fall off in the late game because you're not offering as much as a Rictor or Bellica, Narbash, this type of pick that actually can, like, turn the tides around in the later stage of the game. But I think Decker is actually very strong at just, like, pressing W all the time. And if you're super in sync with your carry, and probably, like, finding, like, opportunity to just, like, gank, and so you can snowball the game out of control. But we need team to execute better on those timing, and for now we're not there yet. So I still believe Decker can find a place, but even if people think, like, she's easy to pick up, I think the skill ceiling in competitive is actually, like, super high, and we're still nowhere to be close to that skill ceiling.
Yes, it's kind of crazy to think though, like, as you say, like, in previous Fangbooths, in previous PCCs, Decker has had, like, such high pick and ban rates as well, but again, like, the win rate just doesn't reflect it. And I think maybe I don't know really. It's kind of, that was one of the things I would admit kind of did baffle me, just to see that just drop off completely. Like, it wasn't like a sudden thing where, like, going from, like, was it like, oh, first pick, first bans to, okay, maybe go to, like, second or third rotation, or kind of picked up every now and again. It literally went from there straight down.
Yeah.
Like, nosedive completely. And I'm not really sure, like, what the answer to that was. I guess maybe it feels like kind of a trend, like, you know, people wanting to put value into the other supports, and putting it into, like, the Bellica, putting it into, like, the Richter, and also this Narbash pick, which pops up every now and again as well.
And some people in the scene, like Top Player, for instance, discussing with Kabodani, Manchu, like, they kind of say that they will never pick Decker if Bellica is open as a support. They just feel like Bellica is a better version of, like, what Decker is providing, which is kind of crazy to say because, like, Decker has this cage, has this stun, has the ultimate, but it's true that in terms of, like, overall damage and consistency of the stun, I think it's really, like, the big thing. Because, like, as Decker, you will never hit 100% of your stun, and in competitive, like, the difference between hitting that stun or missing that stun can be, like, a team fight and the game. And I guess, like, players don't want to deal with that for now.
Yeah, and I think maybe as well is that Decker historically having, like, more of a favorable matchup into things like the steal, into, like, the crunch and stuff like that, which might explain, like, some of the earlier high picks, like, kind of just has a bit of a rough matchup, or, like, hey, we do not want to give away this pick because it kind of shuts down what we want to do. But, like, as trends change, as teams figure things out, they try something different, you know. And also, like, seeing this Bellica pick is like, okay, yeah, maybe we don't actually need to give this much priority towards the Decker pick. If you have, like, an answer to it, or even, like, as you said about Manku as well, like, you know, hey, if Bellica is available, I'm taking Bellica, really.
And moving forward on that slide, I think there is, like, still two little more story that can be interesting to tell. And the first one is regarding mid lane. As we have seen, like, Gideon, very valuable pick, being selected quite a lot, and we see 58%, so for good reason. And also, like, we have the Howitzer at 67%. Like, Howitzer still showing that he's, like, a very, very strong mid laner and, like, having very great performance. where like it's a little bit surprising, it's that like this gadget at 29%, and it feel like in this current meta, despite the fact that we have quite a lot of tank like Sevarog, Quang, Rictor, that's usually like where gadget can shine because this Tesla dummy is very good. But here it feels like that, yeah, gadget is not the answer, and probably like I would say like maybe with those Gideon that go with very heavy tanky like kind of style, maybe like then the gadget can't really get some kills. And also I feel like the big setup hero for this Tesla Dome Wombo combo, like we're saying, like the Steel, the Decker, Zarus wasn't played that much either, so we don't have a lot of setup, and I feel like gadget really needs that setup to shine most of the time. And also like fighting pits, like the EU team, I've seen them time and time again, they don't stay in the pit. They just run at you if you try to come to contest, and suddenly the Tesla Dome is not as good as it could be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just watching like the games and how they kind of played out as well is that I think the mid laner needs that safety, really. I think like that's why Gideon has such a high pick, and also kind of like this howitzer as well. It kind of it both like impresses me and baffles me that Howitzer is not picked more. I think Howitzer is just gives everything that you want from a mid lane, not only just pumping out obscene amounts of damage and that zone control and that AoE as well, but he also gives you safety. He's able to offer himself self peel. You know, he's got the slow mines, he's got the landmine as well that can not only be used to engage but also disengage, get himself over terrain, get himself out of situations as well. And especially like if we're playing into things like if you're playing into like a Quang, if you're playing to Richter, several like a lot of whole W key warriors, you know, being able to just proc the ultimate, go into the air, hit all the damage down, stasis, R2000, and you've just bought so much time. And you know, in a competitive environment, like that's enough time to get the support over, to rotate members in, and I think as well, like these pit fights, the Tesla Dome loses its value, but something like a Howitzer where you have a little bit more control over it as well. I think that's like kind of where the value is at the moment.
And I fully agree with all you said, at the exception maybe on the Rictor. I feel like Rictor is a very strong counter pick into Howitzer because basically Howitzer is a fridge, and like for proficient Rictor, like they can hook target like Res, and like Howitzer is very hard to play into Rictor, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons we don't see it like that snap pick all the time, because Rictor was very contested in that tournament. And against the Rictor, like it can be the difference between having your caster for a late game team fight or not, and I feel like it's too much of a gamble to take against proficient Rictor. And when you see like the performance of Manq, Samwise, Shin on the pick, that's a big risk to take.
Just dodge the hook.
Yeah, just be better, basically.
Just be better. You know, skill issue right there. You know.
And then we do have like what I was saying, like the last like kind of little story on that graph is a little bit about the carry role. As we can see, like Twin Blast was dominating PCC 6. I think it was at 89% win rate. And here we have a 0% win rate Twin Blast. So would that mean that the NA build is that much better than the EU build? Well, I would not say that, but there is maybe some truth there. But here we can see like Murdoch still super duper strong. Res was like super prevalent. And for a lot of people, like there was like a little bit of this discussion that kind of like Twin Blast has kind of like the spooky playstyle, at least in EU when we play with the Soul Callis, the Mind Razor, this type of like direction. And basically like Res is doing the same thing but better in lane. And so I guess like that's one of the reasons like team like kind of decided to move more toward Res. And here and then like some other teams, like we see that for instance like the Kira being picked as a counter of the Twin Blast, like this kind of all-in character that can just like run at the Twin Blast and take advantage of like actually Twin Blast is very weak in the early levels compared to the other carry like a Kira, a Drongo, a Rest, just obliterate the Twin Blast in those trades. And maybe that's something also like that EU team are taking a little bit more advantage. And this Soul Callis build mean that you reinforce on top of that like the weakness in the early game of that Twin Blast, and it apparently wasn't successful here in that tournament.
Yeah, it definitely was something that stuck out to me as well. Just seeing that 0% is one of the things where you kind of almost like kind of disbelieve what you see. It's like, no, that can't be right. And you look into it, it's like, oh god, yeah, that is right. That is not a single win on this Twin Blast, which is crazy to me. But I think, as you said, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Like, if you want poke, you go for the Wraith. If you want to have something with a bit more safety, you go for like a Drongo, or you can play like a Kira as well, or anything like that. Or even if you want something which is a bit more hard hitting, you just take the Murdoch or something like that. And it's like, kind of, what role does Twin Blast really have at the moment? That what does he do that the other AD carries just do not provide? And I think that might be the reason. But it's like to see like kind of like have how teams pick over the Twin Blast necessarily, but like having a 0% win rate as well, even when the Twin Blast was picked up quite a couple of times, it's kind of like a second pick ADC as well, is surprising to me as well. Like, I think maybe it is being caught out, as you say. Like, the Twin Blast doesn't really have that safety, a bit weak early on in the game, and especially like with how we talked about like kind of opportunistic play styles and stuff like that. Like, oh, we can get a pick onto dual lane like this Twin Blast. If we can hit that weakness, then all of a sudden you can like leverage the entire objective off of that as well.
Yeah, I really feel like currently on how Twin Blast was used so far, like the vaporize damage into the ventilate was used to kind of delete one target out of the field, and that was like one of his big strengths. But rest just do that better. And in terms of safety, like they're kind of comparable. True, you get the rocket dash, but on the other side you get like an invisibility that is giving you move speed. So I feel like they kind of feel the same niche currently of what like player were using them for, and rest is just like the better version, because like rest just like as soon as he's level 2 in lane is operational, while Twin Blast like take a long time to actually get online. But maybe actually like Twin Blast, maybe there's like some build like that are allowing him to become a tank killer in the late game that they are not like fully utilized. And so that's maybe like also like here the EU meta that takes a little bit of time to adapt and to find like what is this new niche for the Twin Blast, and not like this explode squishy on 1cc of my teammate at long range that he usually was.
Yeah, it would not surprise me that when we have like PCC 7 rolling around soon as well, like to see Twin Blast pop up again. Maybe there is going to be that innovation. Maybe there is going to be a different style of building, because I think like with AD carries, right, it's how much DPS you can pump out, and with a character like Twin Blast who can just pump out obscene amounts of DPS, I imagine it wouldn't surprise me to see like some of the adaptations to come out. But maybe it just wasn't the right time for Twin Blast, and I think it just gave rise to the other AD characters to say, hey, we're also around.
Mm-hmm. And in the end, I feel like it's kind of a healthy thing to have kind of like this circling of like carries and not always the same being on top, even when they're not like completely touched through the patches. And so like that's exactly what meta are. Like if meta can be cycling even without like the touch of the dev, that means that you have actually a very healthy game on your hand. So we're gonna move on onto the team stat, if I'm not mistaken. No, sorry, I'm mistaken. Like I had it like a new thing from like the previous meta talk that I already forgot about it. It's just that I focus on the pick and bans of specific teams. And so here we have like the top 2 teams in the tournament. I select the top 2 teams because they have the most game played. And so we have 9 games being played by Team Immune and 9 games being played by Team Indecisive. And we're gonna be able to see a little bit more in detail how team are focusing. And here we can see that on the side of Team Immune, they kind of had like an idea, a core idea around the Gideon Sevrok camera. That was kind of like the identity they were willing to go. And one thing that you can also like note from that graph is no specific target ban really. It's just like they were trying to ban based on what the enemy team were willing to play. And they weren't like kind of keeping open. Like we can see no ban on the Rictor. If we look at the Rampage, only 1 ban. And if we look at the Quank, I don't know exactly, 3 bans. So like they kind of still like let open in many matches like that, like got 3 in a sense, those big 3. And they try to target more things. We see those 4 ban of Zarus. It's like 4 ban in the grand final after like Moros dominating in game 1 with the pick. So here it was definitely a target ban.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to kind of like there's so many power picks available right now is like you only have one ban, so there's kind of like you can take away one to force the enemy team to kind of either take away another or leave a lot open, or you just say screw that, let's leave everything open, and then it's like, okay, we're just gonna pick to our strengths and pick what we want to do. But with immune, like some of the players they got, I just say like it doesn't surprise me to see that the Gideon being one of the high picks. I know with adding Bondru to the roster as well, the Sevarog is his comfort pick. It's one of his signatures as well. So giving him the Sevarog, which didn't really have that much like priority. It was just kind of taken like second or third rotation, but it seems no bans against him or anything like that. Giving like Shana seems to be very comfortable on that Chimera pick as well. And then everything else is like, Neft is able to play any AD carry essentially. We spoke about kind of his Wraith and also his Murdoch picks are kind of like the two he looked to be gravitating towards in this event. And then for that supporting role, Shin just was piloting everything really in that supporting role, whatever he kind of needed to.
Yeah, definitely. So even though like we still see like a very heavy focus on the Rictor, like it seems that at that question, do we prefer Rictor or Quang? It seems that Team Immune like answer with Rictor as the 4 pick and Quang only 1 time and being banned 3 times. I guess like they kind of many times like banned the Quang and team ban Rampage and they just secure the Rictor first pick when they were first pick. And as we see that Neft, Love, Res and Murdoch like perfect pairing with the Rictor and just a way to just like dominate, get Nefty some early kills, lead on farm, and suddenly your late game is secured basically if you manage to do that. Moving on to Indecisive here, and we have like here the ban is clear, like 7 ban on Rampage. And discussing with the players, they kind of told that Nysa is not super comfortable on the Rampage and the pick is just too strong. So if you can't play the pick, you have to ban it basically. And so like that was like their ban. And the only 2 times they didn't ban the Rampage, it's because it was either open first pick for them, as we have seen in the quarterfinal, or because the enemy team already banned it before them. And so they don't have to ban it for it. But yeah, it was really like the target ban. And then like here it's really like Bellica Quang. Here we can see like the focus was on Bellica Quang for them. It's really like the pick they were like trying to go for, and this Bellica like mainly on the support role actually, like that's really like what Manchu wanted to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I say if it's available and he's going to take it, like when you have someone like Mancu who is proficient on the character, and also the Bellica very rarely got banned as well. I think only banned, if I just like on mine, if I just quickly hop up as well. So, yeah, Bellica was banned once. Yeah. One ban is like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Like Bellica is an absolutely nuts character to deal with. The flex potential, the seismic assault, like play support, play around that dynamo and getting the knock up and everything like that. Or you just put her in the mid lane and it's like, okay, we're just going to add all this damage on top of what she already provides as well. And I think we spoke a little bit earlier as well about like that instant go button, that engage with the seismic assault. Like Mancu, going back to that point, Mancu hit some nutty seismic assaults. Like they were, some of them were absolutely beautiful to watch, kind of poetry in motion sort of thing as well. They did also like Quang in the jungle role, I believe as well. I think Nysa did pick this up a couple of times for himself. So like not giving it over to Morose, but actually putting it into that jungle.
Yeah, it's definitely something that they love to do, and also like Morose did play the Quang, but is much better, like prefers Crux, his Zarus or his Fengmao, and so it was like definitely like something that was like flexing into the jungle quite a lot. So we're going to move finally on the team stat, but I kind of like those little graph by team because it's see different strategy and what team are kind of prefer to focus on. And you can see that definitely like team come with a plan on what they want for the draft to look like. And because like realistically speaking, you don't have time to practice every single type of team comp. You also have your own player preference and how you play all together. So naturally, like you have different like strategy and plan. And even if there is like a meta, then like the second layer it's kind of started to be different by teams and what they favor in those regards.
Yeah, it's like having an identity as well, and I think that's like something with your draft as a team as well. Is like you can either be reactive to whatever your opponent is doing and try and focus around kind of counter picks, or just saying, hey, we this is how we want to play. Kind of the Ronin strategy of kind of drafting really is like, hey, this is how we want to play, and we're gonna run this at you, and like get out of our way, or or meet us head to head and sort of like that. So yeah, I actually really do like these graphs as an addition. It's very interesting to look at.
And here we're moving towards team stats. So to explain a little bit, like those stats are average over 10 minutes of a game. Of course, this is already like a little biased because like if you take like game of 30 minutes and game of 20 minutes, like we have like this beginning of 1 minute and 30 that not really anything happened. But, and also like it depends on the amount of match you played. As we can see, like the top 2 teams that get to the grand final play 9 matches. The other team that were semi-finalists that also get to play the loser final, which is something we don't have in the PCC. So that's why like those 2 teams have more matches in the name of like 6 matches. And then we have all the quarterfinal team. Since it was all 2-0, it's only 2 matches. But it's still like there is like not like a humongous amount of things to extract from this type of graph, but there is still a few things that I think is interesting. First, like we can see that Import's backpack, Immune and Indecisive kind of felt like how we were talking at the beginning, like the tier 1 team, a little bit above Rocket Rookies, despite Rocket Rookies like getting into the selection. And of course, they have the 3 place, but we can see that they all like win on specific categories. Like not Indecisive is the top one on the top categories, as we can see. When it comes to assist, Indecisive is winning, but when it comes to actual like number of kill and gold, it's actually Immune. And when it comes to like KDA overall and the least amount of deaths, it's actually Import's backpack. And so we were talking about identity, and we can also see like a little bit that going into those numbers. Another thing I found that is actually insane is you think that Indecisive and Immune, they played 9 matches. What does that mean? That means they played most of half of their matches against the toughest opponent in that tournament. So that means to be able to pull out more than 20,000 gold per 10 minutes for both of those teams against the toughest opposition you can have in the tournament mean that their farming is top notch.
The efficiency is incredible to see from both Indecisive and Immune as well. I think Indecisive were pulling ahead of like CS numbers on Immune, which again is like kind of like is not an easy task to do. Like there's kind of like a bit of the meme about Neft playing farming simulator in that duo lane. Every minion he's got to min-max everything about that lane. He's got to get as much gold as he can, and that just allows him to like hit these builds earlier, impact these fights earlier as well. But Indecisive, we're able to pull ahead, and there's only 90 gold per 10 minutes to separate them, which is a kind of incredible to think about, like over 9 games, like how close that actually is, and also how different that is to kind of everyone else as well, because then you go to like the 19Ks, 18Ks, then 15 and 16, of course, to the quarterfinal teams, and also like with them playing the half the tournament against each other as well, is that these were also close games. They've got some wins in there, they've got some losses in there, so that average speaks volumes about like their individual play as a player, with like keeping up on their farm and everything, but also gives them like that look into their identity as a team and stuff like that, with like farming and also like how they play. Like look at the assists, like Indecisive averaging 14 assists per 10 minutes. I think Is that per 10 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, it's per 10 minutes. Like all the stats are per 10 minutes.
And so it's like that's telling me, of course, that like Indecisive, like most of their like kind of like they play a lot together as a team. They're coming from rotations, they're coming from big grouping up fights, 3v3s, 5v5s, where you're going to be getting a lot of assists in those fights because everyone is getting involved. And then you have something kind of like on a bit of the lower end of the spectrum, like on, like, say, the Rocket Rookies, for instance, like only averaging 9.4 assists. Like most of their kills were done by Gak, let's be honest, but they were in like kind of the smaller fights. Like he was getting leads early on, he was kind of popping off later on into the fights as well. But it was those skirmishes, those 2v2s and stuff like that. So that was where they were able to find their success.
And there is like one little last piece that I kind of like from that graph. I don't know what to get from it, but so Ronin played only 2 games against Immune, so naturally like very tough matches, but they still like get like the best number of ward destroyed by 4.6, which is like still like 1.6 over like even 1 ward more than what Sunder bring and 1.6 ward over what the top teams are actually doing. And they also are at 16 wards per 10-minute place, which is like still like in the very top of the chart, but they're like the team that died the most. And so like I have a tendency to say on my guides that Visions wins games, but here even with all that vision they still like died the most. So maybe there is like either I'm super wrong and Vision is actually like very bad in predecessor, or maybe there is like some efficiency of Vision that we need to found, or maybe like it's all those wards they were going for to destroy were some baits set up by Immune, and then they just captured the guy that was just like de-warding the ward.
It's all about that extra 20 XP per ward kill, you know, Mugi. That's what we're playing for here. I think it's what it actually is kind of like almost like the principles behind playing at a competitive level, like playing around your vision game, playing around like your warding and stuff like that. And I'm kind of the opinion, as we said like towards the start of the podcast as well, like if Ronin were not against Team Immune, give them a game against Sunder, give them against like the Rocket Rookies or Omelette du Baguette, and all of a sudden I think those stats would be a much more truer representation, because Immune on their day, and also like in that 2-0 set as well, they can pull teams apart and make like the stats like be very negative against them. But as kind of, hey, this is the thing with stats and data, Mugen. I think you probably have a lot of experience with this as well. Like, you know, it's only 2 games against one of the tournament favorites at the time, and so they're going to make any team look well down here, really.
Exactly. That's why like it's always important to keep the context in mind and not also like look too much into it. It's just like some funny stories, and sometimes there is still like value to extract, like we have seen like this 20,000 gold that really show that Indecisive and Immune in terms of farming and efficiency, they're really on top of the pack. Moving on to the split by role now, and we're gonna start with the carries. So on the left of each screen you're gonna get like the pick number of pick and also like the win rate. So the percentage is for the win rate with the red bar, and on the right side we're gonna get like a little bit of some player stat of the top 4 teams, so only the team that got like to the semi-final or more. And so as we have seen here, like on carry, we already like talk extensively about like all the different carries and such, so we're not gonna talk a little bit more about that, but we're gonna compare a little bit like the different stats. And as expected, like Neft, an average of 100 CS per 10 minutes. Once again, all those stats are per 10 minutes. And so like this guy is at 10 CS per minute, even in the tournament, even in 5 games against the toughest opposition. Yeah, well, Farming Simulator, maybe not, but still like very, very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just what we expect from Neff, honestly, is just having a little look across the board there. And also, you know, top end of the damage as well, 86k, playing heroes like the Wraith, playing like the Twin Blaster as well, which, as we said, like more of the poking kind of dual lanes as well. So he's hitting these skill shots. And as they like, when you watch Neff play some of these heroes, it can make him seem like the most broken AD carries in the game when he is on form as well. I'm pretty sure like there were probably some calls for Wraith to get nerfed into the ground probably after some of Neff's games on that set of performance as well. But I'm just having a look at kind of the hero damage as well. I can see there Gak's got that nice little gold rosette next to his name as well. You know, averaging 99,962 damage per 10 minutes. Gak is a monster, honestly.
Yeah, like these numbers, it's normally like mage numbers, like mid lane numbers. It's not like carry numbers. And also, like as we can see, like on Rocket Rookies, this 69% of kill participation kind of show that Gak was like a big driving force of the success of Rocket Rookies. And this is why like it got like the little like rewards, like that's the stat reward that I like to call it, because true, like it doesn't get like the same amount of CS of Neft, but we can see like in terms of damage and in terms of KDA, he managed to deal like more damage for his team and get like the same kind of similar KDA while not having like the same amount of farm overall. And so that's why like in the end, Gek, like we were talking about it, like top 3 EU carry definitely. And on contention, we can also see like those stats. Like I remember, like I think it was maybe like the previous tournament when Neft played for Indecisive actually, and I come back to Immune for this, to his original team initially, because Team Immune wasn't playing on Fangbooth 5. But here we can see like there was like a big gap, and this gap is starting to close, and that's very nice to see. And I can't wait, like we said, like what is going to be the future on the EU carry scene.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were some rumblings. I think going by what Mancu was saying at the end of the Fangbooth broadcast as well, like I don't think we were sure if, well, kind of living up to the brand of Indecisive as well, whether or not that team would stay together or that team would split apart. You know, this is just the nature of the predecessor competitive environment at the moment, is that teams do shuffle around, rosters do change. So, you know, seeing Gak on another team, seeing like Kabadani onto another team as well, and, you know, keeping that gap closed. Be interesting to see like stacking up against Neft as well, because he's shown he can do it on kind of any team that you put him on as well. As I say, like from Indecisive in the last tournament. And, you know, and I think as well, you know, we do have to mention kind of about Julie Latina on the Imports Backpack as well. Like, kind of the conversation has been so much about Neff, Kabadani, and Gak, but then you've got Julie as well, where it feels like kind of more of a indication about how Imports Backpack were kind of playing, is that they weren't really playing through that Dura lane. Like, Julie just did her job, you know, on the Drongo, pumping out that damage, keeping herself safe, you know, still, you know, farming up, still doing that damage, but just kind of looking at the comparison, like lowest amounts of deaths per 10 minutes. Like Julie played very safe. You know, her team were protecting her well. Her positioning was pretty good as well. The assists as well, 2.5 assists. So certainly contributing into these team fights, but unfortunately doesn't get the recognition that like Nef, Cabo, and Gak do, because you don't really see Julie kind of pop off 1v9 kind of team fights really.
Yeah, and probably like those number with like lowest skill participation and like lowest hero damage means also like probably like very low amount of like boxing 1-to-1 against the enemy carry to try to create like some opportunities. But if I'm facing Gak and like Kabodani, I probably will like think twice before like trying to box them as well. Like definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as well, it's like kind of playing stat. It's like, you know, you don't have to box them. You can just play back, and especially like say with Imports Backpack, if they're not playing through their duo lane, you might not have much like jungler or mid rotations coming that way. So it's kind of okay, I just need to keep safe. I just need to farm up. I'm playing like the Drongos, so these team fights, you know, I'm going to be useful throughout this entire game.
And so here moving towards the support role, and here as we can see in the end, it seems that like Richter had like kind of a low win rate overall, but it's mainly like probably like in jungle he didn't like perform well, because on support he's actually like a monster, doing like very good for himself. And then like of course we do see the Decker that is not performing so well despite like being picked a lot. And I guess like here a lot of team in the quarterfinal kind of gravitate towards that Decker. They're still like in that trap of like Decker is pretty strong, we need to pick it, and it kind of maybe a comfort pick for a lot of support that didn't make the transition yet to actually like playing the other support like the Beleka, the Richter, and so like it's also like those numbers can be skewed also by like the efficiency of each player. Of course, like Manchu and Shin played a lot of Richter and Beleka. They're the top two teams at the end of the tournament. So naturally, like the win rate of those two picks are going to go up while everything else is going to go down. Does that mean that those picks are better? Probably a little bit, because they're favored by those top players. But are they that much better? Probably not. So that's something that we have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and there's also like the other supports. As we mentioned a little bit about Samwise playing this Muriel, which is very much like Mr. Meds talk about it. Like this is not seen in PCC. This is very much an EU pick in the Muriel. And Samwise had some fantastic games on that Muriel trial. Really did change probably like game-changing plays for the Rocket Rookies in the later stages of those fights as well. This Narbash pick as well, another one which saw a couple of bans here and there, but teams starting to pick it up, and I think PCC kind of highlighted what the Narbash can bring to the table as well. But I think we're very much in favor of our Enchanter supports or the big guy with the hook. Really, that's kind of what EU wants to base itself on.
Yeah, and here we can see that overall, like here on the support role, I feel like everyone was kind of like neck and neck when it comes to it on term of the stat. We can see like the amount of deaths is like kind of limited. Of course, like Manchu and Shi have like a higher amount of deaths, but that comes like from like the contest of the grand final, and support are harder to survive in very contested environment. But in terms of KDA, everyone is kind of all around. In terms of warding, also everyone is kind of neck and neck. Only Shin a little bit behind, and I guess that's because he made a transition to support for that tournament, because we have seen him play like mid lane, off lane, but it was the first time we see him play support in a tournament, and so like he may be like not fully used to just like spamming those soulstone ward every time you go back to base. So that's maybe like where we see like the differences. And here we're gonna like offer the reward to Zane, because like despite playing Richter a lot, that is a pick that is easy to go down. You still get like the best KDA, doing a very good job at warding and dying like the least overall when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I think that just highlights when you play something like the Richter as well, like keeping you keep the kills low but the assists high. You're hitting them riplashes, you're hitting them skill shots, you're in the middle of these fights, you're providing disruption. And also, I guess when you're playing the Richter as well, like you're getting a lot of value out of like your skewers and your setup and your silences, and also not getting blown up immediately for us as well, which also says to me about how the team follows up on those engages. Like oftentimes, I think maybe my personal experience of my own MMR, which definitely is not nowhere near this level, but we have seen riplashes be almost like death sentences to the actual Richter because there's just no follow-up really.
And I think like the last stat of that graph before we move on is the 73% kill participation on Samwise. That once again kind of show Rocket Rookies were a very dual lane centric kind of team. We have seen Gak kill participation before, and here Samwise just confirmed that idea that if those two guys were if some deaths were involved, it's probably like generated by that dual lane on the Rocket Rookies, or at least they were participating in those kills.
Yeah, and I think like that it's just that Decker as well, is that you're not playing a tank, so when the Decker does get caught out, like you're the one that oftentimes like you kind of have to be the sacrifice. You can't really buy time. You're an Enchanter support. You're not a tank. You can jump around and everything like that, but these players hit their skill shots, and maybe that is a bit of the weakness of the Decker as well, is that if you get caught out, like you don't really have any damage. You can throw down your cage, hit a stun, but you're dead, really. There's nothing else to it.
And moving on to the mid lane slide, so we already like covered a little bit like the win rate, but here interestingly is like the top 3 pick are all like at 50% or above, which means that like really like the meta was around the Gideon or Witzer Bellica. We see the gadget struggling a little bit, and any off meta pick, like they got picked only once, but they didn't work out the contest once, the Fae once. But in terms of like actual damage here and overall like numbers, like those 4 mid laners actually like put in on the work. Every single mid laner, even MT playing like this more like kind of I guess like there is a mistake between like the Gideon and the gadget. MT is supposed to be played Gideon more, and TSC is supposed to play gadget more. Sorry about like that little mistake here. But overall, like even getting like the 9,000 damage with this tanky Gideon, and we see like the others like at 99,000, 98,000, 96,000. Like I was saying on Gak hero damage, like those are more like mage stat, and we can see it there. But on terms of farming, like MT a little bit ahead of the pack. But the last thing is just like one goal is toppling everything almost. Like number 1 on kill. Undes is just like right behind MT, but still very good. Number 1 on assist, number 1 on kill participation, so number 1 on KDA, and number 1 on hero damage, and only second on CS. But if you just get like the high KDA with high hero damage, like the farm is just like to convert that into those stats. So that's why Wangle get like the rewards for the mid lane.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think as well with Wangle playing that howitzer, I think there's two factors that play into it. It's like kind of the mid laners that Wangle is playing, but also with playing on Import's backpack, Import plays through mid lane as well. So Wangle was very heavily involved in a lot of early game fighting, early game skirmishing as well, and just the numbers. Like I don't nearly breaking the 10,000 damage at 10 minutes kind of barrier really as well, which is absolutely just insane to think about. Another stat that sticks out to me, which kind of does surprise me a little bit, is actually on Sid, with his farming numbers being kind of the lowest of the big four as well. Because I think he had a fantastic tournament, really.
Yeah, he had a fantastic tournament. I feel like he was like focused quite a lot in many games and he managed to survive. So I guess that's like the reason he didn't get like that much farming, because he just like did a good job at surviving. But of course, if you get gank a lot, I remember the game against Import's backpack, for instance, he had to survive many times through the gank, so you're naturally gonna lose a little bit of farm. But if you keep dealing, like if you keep like being impactful on the kills and still deal the hero damage, once again, like we said, the farm is only secondary. One thing that I'm starting to note though is like I'm always like giving the rewards towards like Import's backpack or Rocket Rookies so far. We got 2 rewards for Import's backpack, 1 rewards for Rocket Rookies, and that kind of show, I think that's one of the reason of like these best of 5 grand final that go to the distance, which means that naturally, since you have like very tough opposition, like the other people have more possibility to shine, because it's not like as hard to get like those stats in on a few less game, where like that means that those quarterfinal match has a bigger impact overall than those like 5 grand final match.
100%, yeah, as well. It's kind of like that sample size. It's playing against that stiff opposition. I'm thinking like it would be so interesting to see like the stats if we had like some form of like consistent games or something like that. When as the sample size gets bigger, all of a sudden a lot of these stats like starts coming out to you, because it depends on so many factors, as it says, how many games you played, the manner of the games that you played, like were they just instant, like I imagine like the stats are going to be naturally lower if the game's only 22 minutes, as opposed to if the game is 30 minutes, 35 minutes. It's almost adding like another level on top of that as well. How your team play around that. So like if we had something like, like a league or something, where like, teams are playing consistently together, the stats, it's a dream. It must be an absolute dream to be in that situation, but we're not there yet.
That's the important word, and I can't wait to be there, because like that's where like I will just like enjoy myself of finding like all those little like needy little stats and be able to find like the good crunchy numbers for everyone to display them. Moving on to jungle, and as you can see here, like suddenly like the jungle ecosystem is like a lot of heroes. Like we can see we have like 5, 10, 12 different heroes overall that have been picked into the jungle, and so like there is like a lot of variation. What is interesting to see is that Greystone pick, like 100% win rate in the jungle role. I feel like that with Rampage being king of the jungle, but being banned all the time, I feel like you kind of forget a little bit that one very strong jungler is actually Greystone. And every time Greystone was in the jungle, he was creating so much space for his team, like beating the camera really like single-handedly. And yeah, Rampage was back, but Rampage was banned, so Greystone was actually like still there, and team kind of forgot about it, but he's still like super duper strong when Rampage is not in the equation.
Yeah, Rampage is definitely present, but he's kind of like on the balcony overwatching, kind of like with the King of the Jungle. He's royalty, right? He's on his balcony overlooking all the peasants fighting amongst themselves, really, not really getting involved until he has to, at least. But yeah, I think this kind of like the hangover from PCC coming in there, of course, like Chimera versus Greystone, and then kind of this Quang obviously making his tournament debut, as well as like we spoke about, like the flex pick and the flex potential as well. Definitely interesting to see, like, Kwang actually in his jungle win rate as well, being a lot different to his offlane stats. I would imagine as well. Like, as say, what did they have? Like a
I think it was 67% overall.
60s, yeah. It's like,
and here it's 33% on the jungle role. So it's definitely, you can see also, like, that's why like the breakdown by role is interesting, because he's certain pick like Richter, like we said, like super duper strong when it comes to actual like support role. But here we can see in the jungle struggling a little bit with a 33% win rate, only winning 1 out of the 3 games he got played there. So it's definitely like something to see. Regarding stat of players, another rewards that go for Import's backpack. So it seemed that Import's backpack was like farming stats. They weren't like farming wins, they were farming stats. But here you can see like the best KDA with the most amount of kills, lowest amount of deaths. Naturally, Shanna is slightly better, but still like very similar. Like on assist, like so far ahead. Kill participation, hero damage, CS, like Import was just like showing how strong of a jungler he is. And the little stat I always love is like this ward stat. The first stat is like the number of ward placed. The second stat is the number of ward destroyed per 10 minutes. And we can see that it was funny because on PCC 6, like every single jungler had a different timing when they were changing their wards toward a sentry. Like some jungler were keeping it longer and stuff. Like here in EU, everyone except Import just like place 1 ward and then go for sentry, while Import go for sentry immediately. But there is not that much disparity beside like this Import going for sentry immediately and the rest just place a ward and then just reset.
Yeah, it's definitely not got enough room in that backpack for the wards. I mean, with all the like little rosettes that Mugi you've been giving Import's backpack, there's just not enough room to add any warding into there as well. I find it very interesting that with Import is like, 'cause I was expecting like his hero damage with how Import plays as well, like, very gank heavy play style. He's kind of here, there, and everywhere, making plays across the map, getting his team ahead. So, his hero damage is, definitely up there, especially when compared with the other junglers. But his CS is keeping up with that as well. It's kind of like feels a bit at odds with that as well. And I think that kind of just highlights Import as a player. Definitely one of the top tier junglers in the scene right now. And hey, there's a reason Import's got his name on the back of that backpack. And that is a bit of a tongue twister, actually, on the back of that backpack. But that's why he's a namesake. That's why he was a PCC MVP as well. So, he still had a fantastic tournament as well. Like, Import definitely one of the first names on the list, I think, when roster's going to be released for the upcoming event.
Yeah, and definitely if you want to get like some like lesson on how to be efficient at jungling, definitely like watch some of the game of Import in tournament, because like this man almost never stop, and if he stops it's because he's gonna get more by stopping 10 seconds afterwards. And so that's very, very, very nice to see.
And I think didn't you do a video on him as well, Mugi, as well, on your channel? Was it?
It's just like got released, I think it was yesterday, and that was like one of the match he played, and he was playing the Crunch that we've seen, like his most big heroes. And it's just like beautiful about like how this man never stopped, and he was like ahead of the offlaner in experience in that match, like as a jungler. That's just crazy to just like say that out loud in predecessor. That's just how good like Import he's at keeping the action going, basically.
Yeah, and that's a beauty of jungle efficiency by Import on Crunch. Go check that out on YouTube, on Mugiwawa's YouTube channel as well.
Thank you for the advertisement here.
Advertising it on your own podcast, on your own Twitch channel.
And so like we're going to move on to the last role. So we do get like the offlaner role. I feel like there is like maybe like a mistake on the Kwang win rate somewhere, because here I would expect that Kwang go much higher than that. So maybe there's like a few stats that I need to check in that regard here. But here finally we're gonna get like one little rewards for one of the top 2 teams, and of course Moros on the Grutos. Like one thing I love to see on that is Moros at 0.7 deaths per 10 minutes, because I remember when I started arriving on the scene of predecessor, I was kind of like a new flower arriving, enjoying my time, and I decided to start coaching a little French squad that Manq and Moros were on it. There was also like Berserker, if I remember correctly, and Moros at that time was discovering offlane, and every time he was getting gank, it was like, my god, like I get jungle diff all the time, and he was dying every single time the jungler was appearing on his lane. And seeing Moros a year after becoming like one of the top offlaner in the game, like the patience he had in that game 5 against like Immune, when like he got ganked 3 times with no support for his team, playing a Grux that you need to kind of bully, and accepting that just like, okay, I'm gonna have to wait, keep my farm up, wait for my moment, lurking in the shadows to get there, and finally having like a big impact later on. Like you can see like the KDA on that guy, like 5.9, when the second is Noz with 3, like double the KDA of the second best KDA player. And actually Moros is the number 1 KDA of the tournament, if we don't consider H-Friend that just played like 1 match in the quarterfinal as an indecisive sub.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was Moros's tournaments. Honestly, I'd say like he dominated the stats, he dominated the games that he was in as well. And it's crazy to think like there's just this one pick. Like, he's got 3 picks that were just banned against him consistently. Like Grux obviously just wasn't played until game 5, but his Zarus was banned against him, his Feng Mao got banned against him as well on some occasions. He did eventually get to play some of those picks as well, but honestly, you must be very proud, Mugi, as well, kind of like to think back on that journey and say like, oh, it's not jungle diff anymore, this is solo diff. Like, you come to my lane, you're going to die, you're gonna have a bad time if you gank me.
Yeah, there was like some plays, like I remember also like one play on the 1v3 against Import Backpack that like Moros managed to just like win on the Grux. He was Gruxing that tournament, and that's reflecting the 100% win rate we can see on the left graph.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as in my notes, it's just morose underlined capital letter. That's all that you need to say as well. But like, just the hero damage, 7,000 as well. Like, the only closest one is Attacker of Requiem, on 6.7k as well. Like, that's such a huge difference. Like, the Morose is like 1.8 kills. Like, this man is solo killing his lane and also killing the jungler when he even turns up as well. Like, what a phenomenal performance as well. Assists are up there as well. Like, and I actually want to talk about a little bit about Attacker of Requiem as well there. Even though we only had like, he got the 6 games as well. Definitely did impress me in that offlane role as well. I kind of like almost like having a role where essentially you've got Gak on your team, so all the attention's over on the complete opposite end of the map. So it's like Attack of Requiem is like, okay, just doing my job, but just playing to like the strengths and stuff. But like he was able to consistently like kind of win lane, or at least go even in a lot of these games as well. And he was being that engaged for his team as well. But unfortunately, the games that he had against Immune in the semi-final day, his quarterfinal performance was very impressive. Semi-finals, Immune kind of exist, which was unfortunate. The diff happens, but hey ho. But still like pumping 67,000 player damage out there. Joint highest assists. So the numbers still back up that Attack of Requiem was still doing very well, just everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And like last thing, like I have to admit, like it's a little bit of Cocorico moment, but when you see that you get like the most like CS while also like getting the most kill participation in your team, like that means that like it seems like currently on the EU scene, like Moros is a step ahead of the opposition on offlane. And there is like one thing I love about that is like this guy, he just wants to play what he likes, and he doesn't really care so much about the meta. And that's like I think a nice cry for everyone that wants to be involved in competitive, that you don't have to be a meta slave. Like I think being a meta slave like makes it easier to enter competitive aspect, but being like your own man that just believe in what you're doing and just like being the best at a specific things can also find success even in that environment.
Here, Mugi. Here. Completely agree with that one. It's kind of like, of course, meta is most effective tactic available. It exists for a reason, but at the same time, being able to adapt, to think outside the box. You got to be in the box before you can think outside of the box, certainly. So I think Morose is definitely is gonna be like the offlaner to beat as well. I'll be looking forward to seeing hopefully many more competitive games being played by Morose as well. But also, like, I want to see more of this Grux picks. You know, like Morose is showing what he can do. Like, I remember Bondrude has apparently got a pretty good Grux as well, but he was kind of stuck on Sevarog duty. So Bondrude, you know what needs to be done, my friend.
And so we are going to move on to the trivia reward slide, once again, if I'm not mistaken. And like last time, we now have 9 reward on top of the 6. And so I'm sorry, MindQ, but the Lighthouse go to Samwise with 35 words. And if we compare that with PCC 6, PCC 6 had Ray in it, and Ray got 49 on that reward. So EU players start wording a little bit more because we're only at 35 and we're very, very far away. On the side of the bestie, which is like the character that got the most assists in a single game, all those stats is like based on a single game. We got Zane on the Rictor with 24 assists. The Farmer, oh, very surprising. We got Neft there with 450 CS on the Twin Blast. Here, I'm actually like bamboozled by that result. The Infiltrator. The Infiltrator is the number of wards destroyed in a single game. This reward has been exclusively given to jungler because they use the sentry every single time. And here, ManQ on the support role on the Bellica got 9 ward, and it's the first time a support managed to get that reward. So you didn't get the Lighthouse, but you managed to do something like great as well, ManQ. So it's fine for you. The serial killer, Neft, on another game with the race, 16 kill in one game. And then the false friend. So the false friend is like the support that get the most CS in one game because it's the false friend because he's stealing your carry's farm. And here we can see that Samwise, despite playing like with Gag, that is absolutely a monster at farming, on this Bellica game managed to get like 95 CS. And I have to admit, that's very high. Like usually this number is around 40, not 95. So Samwise, like maybe you're not meant to be a support, like maybe you just want to be a mid laner. So we're gonna see that. Then the W here, so it's the most amount of deaths, and here we have like actually like 3 people that battling for that reward at 10 deaths with Shin, Kira Stardust, and Tarkraf Requiem. And then we do have the Maniac, which is like the most amount of damage dealt in one game. It's Simi Goes Hard that played the Fae, his signature Fae, and managed to do like 52k damage. And even if the Fae didn't win, like I guess he just picked the character to get this reward. I'm pretty sure that was the plan all along. And finally, like the Protector is actually Puzzle Panda with 62k of damage taken for his teammate on himself. And yeah, like in Omelette du Baguette, he had to tank for everyone because when you have like your carry that get the W key or rewards, you kind of have to go into the fray to try to protect him.
Yeah, and I think that's just it's just what you have to do really as well. Is like you find yourself in these situations, you're trying to help out people, and it's just not enough. So you're just kind of there on the rampage, and also like you're playing a rampage as well. Like you go big mode, you press your BM off. Everyone just shoots at you as well. I do like that Samwise not only gets like the Lighthouse, but also the false friends reward at the same in similar games. It's kind of like 2 different sides to the same support as well. I think maybe that Bellica game, Samwise was taking matters into his own hands. Perhaps I'm not too sure at least.
Yeah, so he's trying like to say that it's because he survived team fight when the inhibitors were down. So at some point you have to defend your own core, but. That sounds like excuses to me and not the reality of the match. So we're reaching like kind of the end of this talk show. So we're going to have like a little announcement for that. So the 2 announcements I have for today is that tomorrow I'm going to get my jungle guide released. So for those that like that series on my YouTube channel, you will be able to see it, which is kind of like the general principle on how to be better at specific role. And the jungle is the first one in that series, only missing the mid lane. And also you can see here on the slide, I've built like what I call a hero builder that was made on Excel that allow like for a lot of theory craft. But I feel like Excel is a little bit too limited to kind of keep these things going forward, and also like for people to use it. So I'm currently working on doing an upgrade of the things to create like the hero builder into an application that would be available on my website in the future. And so like be tuned for that. If you're actually loving theorycraft, that would be like definitely something that will be useful for you. But there is still like a lot of work to be done on it before it's ready for everyone. But that's definitely something I'm working on. So if you're interested, be sure to join my Discord, follow me on Twitter, and you will see like all about it. Talking about following on Twitter, that's the moment that you can see like absolutely like all the social networks of the people involved in that talk show, with also like the For the Core. And yeah, so you can like follow up TJDJ on Twitter. I still say Twitter, I don't say X. I don't know. When will I make the change? We'll never know. And also like Mr.Meds being there. TJDJ, of course, like number one caster, at least in my heart, in the predecessor scene. And and on the rest, like you can find myself like on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, but also like my website, predacademy.com. For those that are actually interested in like getting into the detail of the stats or have a write-up on all the tournament matches and all the videos, there is like a little blog section on my website that can be of interest for you. And yeah, that was it for today. Thanks a lot, TJ, for sticking to the end while Mr. Meds decided to leave us alone. But of course, in real stuff, it's always like the most important things. That's what we have to take care of first and foremost. Predecessor, it's a deep passion for us, but always a passion only nonetheless. And thank you everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed the Meta Talk on Fangbooth 6. The next one will probably be on PCC 7, but that will be in April. So be sure to tune in. Like they opened the registration for the tournament. So any player that are interested to play on the NA tournament, feel free to go on their Discord and register through their form to be ready to not miss the action of that tournament. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching. You are all amazing. Thank you, TJ, for joining. And I hope you have all a wonderful time and a wonderful weekend. Thank you, everyone. We are going to be out.